If you're thinking about buying a home and moving to Oregon, there's a couple new X factors in the real estate market. One of them is benefiting buyers, and it's happening right now. One of them looks like it might benefit sellers, and it's just getting started, and we're not sure where that's going to end. I'm going to talk about those things as well as what the market might look like kind of heading into the winter months here in Portland, Oregon. All that starts now. Hey everyone, Seth Marchant with the Home Team Brokers. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new to this channel living in Oregon and you'd like to know more about what it's like to live in Oregon, make sure and hit the subscribe button and tap the bell. That way you'll be notified every time we drop a new video, which is every week. And if you're somebody that's thinking about moving to Oregon and buying a home, as real estate brokers, as much as we like to make these videos, we'd love to help you move here. So you can call us, text us, email us, or you can even click the link below in the description if you want to schedule a Zoom call with us in our calendar. As you may know, a lot of the real estate market slows down in the wintertime. Oregon is no exception. We start to get the weather, a little bit of rain. People are getting ready for school. If people haven't sold their home and it's been listed on the market throughout the summertime and maybe into the fall, some people might even pull their home off the market and wait till the springtime. So that's when things really pick up here around Portland, Oregon is springtime. Peak inventory is usually around August, at the very earliest end of August, usually around September, but once we get to October, that's when you start to see inventory dip. And normally inventory goes down about 1% this time of year, like clockwork. In this case, inventory's actually gone up 1%, and the numbers that you're looking at here are nationwide. I'll show you the numbers for Portland in just a moment. This is something that's highly unprecedented, and the inventory issue, if you've been following along with this crazy housing market that we've been in for the last few years, is really the crux of the problem. There's not enough homes. There's way more buyers out there than there are people selling homes, which creates this competitive market, which creates these multiple offer situations where people are paying way above asking price for a home. Is probably great news for buyers. It's probably really going to help buyers out. So why is this? Why are we seeing this? Why are we experiencing an uptick in inventory when this never ever happens? Well, the first thing we look at is new listings. There's actually not a whole lot more new listings right now. So it's not like a flood of listings are coming to the market. It's mostly homes that have just been on the market. So the days on market have increased. Homes aren't going under contract nearly as quickly as they were before compared to this time last year. Anecdotally, I've seen more homes sort of falling out of contract. So we just have homes that just haven't sold, that are just sitting on the market. That's probably going to be the biggest reason why we've seen an uptick in inventory. And with the market changing so quickly, I would imagine there's some sellers out there that listed like in August or September, probably expecting, even though the market had slowed, probably expecting to sell pretty quick. And when they didn't sell pretty quick, especially if they're listed a little bit too high, they're still trying to hang on, still trying to sell before the market really starts to slow down into the winter time. So it'll be interesting to see what inventory looks like through November and December, but I suspect there's some sellers that thought they would have sold in August or September that are trying to hold on. And that's why we're kind of seeing these longer days on market and the inventory build up. But other than those people, not seeing a whole lot of new inventory. There was, over the past 6 to 12 months, a lot of discussion about panic sellers. We've been seeing headlines for, maybe about a year or so now that there's going to be a market crash. A lot of people predicted a market crash at 5% and 6%. Now we're above 7, close to 7.5%. Seems like 7% was really kind of the level where you started to see some home values go down, specifically in some of the markets that were the hottest throughout the past couple of years. Boise, Idaho, for example, or Austin, Texas, Phoenix, Arizona. Those have been some of the hottest markets, and then they've also been some of the markets to retract quickest. So I guess the bigger they are, the harder they fall, right? And so kind of seeing those headlines for the past year or so, there were people that thought that maybe that sellers were going to sell a little bit earlier, and maybe we might see a flood of homes coming to market for sellers that maybe were thinking of selling in 2023 or 2024, if they can do so, they would have sold in 2022, kind of predicting or following along with some of the people that predict that market crash. But I don't think we've quite seen the seller panic yet. I don't think that's the reason for this increase in inventory. There might be a few panic sellers out there, but from what we're seeing so far, it's mostly just higher days on market and homes just not going under contract as quickly. Now, if we look at Portland, we're going to see it's going to be less than 1%, so it's just a tiny tick upwards, but it is trending upwards rather than down. So be really interesting to see, not just with the rest of the country, but for you people watching, what Portland is going to look like. So if you're thinking about moving to Portland, now is a great time with inventory going higher. But it'll be really interesting to see what things look like in the coming months, especially once we get to January. That'll really set the tone for the year. But for all you buyers out there, the more we can build up the inventory, the better it's going to be for you. It's still probably a seller's market, although it's very quickly starting to become almost balanced, and at some point it's going to shift to a buyer's market. Now, anecdotally, some other reasons why there might be an uptick in inventory. This probably won't apply to Portland as much. It's going to apply to the hotter markets, the more speculative markets, especially markets that people have a lot of investment properties in, like a Phoenix, for example. But I'm hearing that short-term vacation rentals, known as STRs, those things that people put on Airbnb and VRBO, are not doing so well right now. And there's a lot of short-term investment properties that are now being listed on the market. So you see some of these things, and maybe some of these things look like great deals. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Sometimes with a contrast effect, something that if you're comparing something, the price now to maybe this past summer, this spring, 6 months ago, or even a year ago, prices might look good now, but if you compare it to maybe 2 years ago or even 2019, if you contrast it with 2019, that might be a little bit of a different story. But I'm seeing a lot of people out there that are saying that they feel like the vacation rental market, some of the prices out there are really good, and they very well could be too. So it'll be interesting to see how these short-term vacation rentals do when they hit the market. Are they going to sell? Or are they going to sit like a lot of other stuff has been sitting, and we're going to get a higher days on market and inventory is going to keep going up? Or are they going to go low enough that they attract more people in? Something that's interesting about the short-term vacation rental market is that over 50% of the listings currently on Airbnb have been added in the last 2 years. So this whole short-term vacation rental market has exploded. It's really exploded due to websites such as Airbnb. There's also VRBO, which came before Airbnb, if you're not familiar with that one. And what happened is these websites really made it easier for the average person to have an investment property. Before websites like this existed, if you wanted to have a vacation rental and actually get some real cash flow, you're gonna have to have a website. You might have to do Facebook ads or Google ads. You might even be doing, traditional print media, but there's a lot of work and expenses that maybe didn't exist before. And the barrier for entry for people wanting to actually successfully cash flow a short-term vacation rental was much higher until those websites like Airbnb and VRBO came along. So they've sort of exploded the vacation rental market. As you can see, again, over half of the listings have been added in the last 2 years. A lot of people that are getting into this market are people that maybe don't have a ton of experience with this. A lot of people in the last few years have done what's called double dipping. One of the biggest challenges for somebody buying a new home, if you're not renting, if you already own a home, so if you're not coming from a rental and your lease is expiring, if you need to sell your home before you can buy your next home, which is the case for a lot of people, that transition is very hard to do. It's really the hardest thing about moving when you buy a home, if you already own a home, is working out those logistics. And so ideally, if you can, the people that can afford to, what they've done in the past few years is they keep their primary home, they don't sell their home, they buy another home, they have enough cash for down payment for a second home, they buy that home becomes their primary, and then their primary becomes an investment property, and they rent that property out on like an Airbnb. And so you've had a lot of these double dippers over the past few years that have seen the explosion of vacation rentals and things, websites like Airbnb that have been attracted by those things and having the lower barrier of entry to be able to kind of get into that market. And consequently, those people are probably experiencing, some growing pains and some pains with, a new business and something that they're not familiar with. So there's a lot of new short-term vacation rental owners out there that maybe did okay in the last year or two, but now aren't quite getting the cash flow that they need to make it make sense for them to have that second or even a third home. And so I think we might start to see some vacation rentals or just rentals, could be long-term rentals too. We might just see more of those start to hit the market. And that might be kind of some of the more anecdotal reasons for some of the hotter, more speculative markets to go down quicker because they're being flooded more with inventory. Not so much the case in Portland, Oregon. There is a rental market here and a short-term rental market, especially outside of Portland, for places like Mount Hood, the Oregon coast, Central Oregon, the Willamette Valley. Portland Metro itself, not so much, so don't really expect to see that kind of activity in the Portland Metro area, but we might see a little effect, or at least some ripple effects that are going to affect Portland. All in all though, more inventory is going to be an advantage for buyers. Okay, so what about sellers? What out there is going to help the sellers going forward? Not that they need any help, but there is something that's happened, and you've heard about it. You've probably heard about this in the last couple of years. I've heard people talk about this, but haven't heard it talked about too much as it pertains to the real estate industry, which is there has been a baby boom. You've probably heard about pandemic babies or COVID babies or whatever it may be, with people working from home or having to stay home. They can't go to work, whatever their circumstances were a year ago. A lot more people at home, a lot more people conceiving. So we've had a little bit of a baby boom recently, and when people have more kids, they need more space. That's one of the #1 reasons for somebody moving, is because they have kids, whether it's a new kid that they need a new bedroom for, or they're moving to a particular area for like a school district, for example. So seeing this baby boom, and as you can see on the numbers here, the uptick for the last year or two, or at least for the last year, has been for all age demographics, with the exception of just recently, it looks like the 15 and 19-year-olds probably going back down. Maybe not necessarily a bad thing, but so if we continue to see this trend, there is going to create a greater demand for people that want to upsize or to go from like a 2-bedroom type of condo apartment or something like that into like a 3 or 4-bedroom home having a kid. So that's going to be real interesting to see how that plays out, because that's going to be a big advantage for sellers. And if all this inventory brings us to a buyer's market at some point in the near future, it might get tipped back towards the seller's market. And we don't expect rates to go up forever. I'm definitely not going to try and predict rates. Did at the beginning of the year, never would have guessed that we would have gotten to 7.5 by Q3, Q4 of 2022. Nobody predicted that, obviously. So it's going to be hard to predict what rates will look like a year from now, but there's a decent chance that they could be lower. So if we see lower rates and even greater buyer demand than we saw before because people are having kids, we might just be back to a seller's market again. So what does that mean for you? Well, if you've listened to me much on this channel, my message hasn't changed. If you ask a realtor when's the best time to buy a house, a lot of them are going to tell you right now. My message is always the same. The best time to buy a house is when you're ready. And the caveat to that is, I would say, not to try and speculate, not to try and time the market. We have had a handful of buyers somewhat recently that say, I'm going to wait and see what the market does. And, instinctively, kind of intuitively, I get that. I understand that it looks like, things could, as I'm sort of alluding to, become more of a buyer's market. So, why not wait and see what happens if you're a buyer? The only hesitancy I have about that strategy is every time I've seen people, whether it's professionals or amateurs, try and time out the market, it just never ever works out. And I see the professionals get it wrong a lot. Don't expect the amateurs or the people that don't do this for a living to get it right. So if you're trying to time the market, that is really, really tough to do. Like I've mentioned probably in a few other videos, obviously at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people panic sold because they thought that the real estate market was going to crash, and what happened? It exploded. So case in point, very tough to predict the market. If you're ready to buy, the best time to buy is now. If you're not ready to buy, just wait until you're ready to buy and then act quickly. There's a few sayings about this. Don't wait to buy to wait, or as Warren Buffett says, time in market is more important than timing the market, or at least it's easier and more effective to do. Time in market is more important than, or easier than timing the market. It's very tough to time the market. So just having more time and not being on the sideline in the market in the long run is typically going to give the average person the greatest net positive. So if you're thinking about buying or selling, or if you have more questions about what we think about the market's going to do, what the Portland market's going to do, how you can kind of plan out your move, all the logistics of that, you can call us, text us, email us, or you can click the link in our calendar in that description below on YouTube here. Just click the more button and schedule a Zoom call with us. Typically best for people coming from out of state, which I know a lot of you are. And if this video helped you, give us a thumbs up. Feel free to leave a comment and let us know what you think about the market. And if you want to see more videos about what it's like to live in Oregon, including what the real estate market is like, make sure and hit the subscribe button, tap the bell. That way you'll be notified every time we drop a new video, which is every week. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.